And the memories I have of those 4 weeks together are when the team came together. Like the last night when we were celebrating our win against Argentina, but also remember 20 players crammed in at 9 o'clock at night to watch Love Island from back home. And so maybe that's
name them.
Who won that?
And I was surprised with even the older players were there. A couple of management sneaked in.
And Chris, I mean, you alluded to those 6 uncapped players there as well. And obviously with the World Cup in mind, how much is this a chance for them to impress and make their mark? And just give us a little insight into your thinking about these 6 uncapped players and why they're in this squad.
Well, this is good. First in-person podcast in over 2 years, and it's March 2020. Since we've been here, we've been in car parks at the side of the road. I've been in hotels and bedrooms and spare rooms and everything, but it's brilliant to be back to the official Scottish Rugby podcast in person. Delighted to say we've got some professional help as well. We've had in Joe Wilson, well known to BT Murrayfield, match day announcer, big Scottish Rugby fan. You're going to help us over the next few weeks and months, and it's great to have you along.
Very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me. Chris, I just have one important question before we get going. I need to know what to call you because, you know, I met you, introduced you as Chris. I know everyone else calls you Mossy. I just want to know.
We'll go with whatever you
okay,
choose.
Mr. Patterson.
Mr. Patterson will
okay,
be fine.
excellent.
Esquire. Actually, Doctor.
Sir Chris.
Doctor.
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 There we go.
Well,
Dr.
I'm a doctor,
Patterson.
yeah.
I've got a dodgy knee. Could you have a look?
I'm a doctor of science, I believe it or not. Yeah, so not medicine. But the other voice you hear, brilliant to have you along, Joe, and helping us along. Looking forward to this. But also Gregor, Townsend, head coach of the national team. Delighted to have you along. And as we today, he announced a 40-man squad to travel to Chile and Argentina for the 4 consecutive games in the summer. So, well, firstly, how are you? We've not spoken for a wee while. It's a big smile on your face. Must be desperate looking forward to getting back to the boots on, back at the training field and heading out to South America.
Absolutely. We had a squad Zoom last night with all the players in the squad, and even though it's a bit artificial that you're chatting to the players, the excitement is starting to grow for us as coaches, and I believe the players too, that we're going on tour. The first time since 4 years that we've been on a tour. Somewhere new in Chile, new places in Argentina as well, and we're back together, so we can't wait.
And does that just add to the excitement, the fact that it has been so long?
Yeah, I think touring is one of the best things about our sport. Chris will say the same thing. Your best memories often come from tours, and it might be things you do off the field, the bonds you make when you're together for 4 or 5 weeks, but also the experiences that are unique. Like we're going to Santiago and then the north of Argentina. I don't think anybody would be going there unless it was a rugby tour. So it's a great opportunity. Not having had a tour for 4 years makes it even more special.
So many things change, and rugby moves as quick as anything else. Professional sport moves really quickly, and you mentioned that something that my greatest memories of being involved are touring, being together. Does that, obviously it still means something, but is touring still the same as it was in United? The fun, the camaraderie, that's all that's a bigger part of the game now. It doesn't get lost in professionalism, doesn't it? Some maybe bits do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the last time we toured, we were in Canada to begin with.
That's right.
Then went to Houston, and then we ended up in Argentina. And the memories I have of those 4 weeks together are when the team came together. Like the last night when we were celebrating our win against Argentina, but also remember 20 players crammed in at 9 o'clock at night to watch Love Island from back home. And so
name
maybe
them.
that's
name them.
Who won that?
And I was surprised with even the older players were there. A couple of management sneaked in, but so that's maybe where the changes are.
Yeah.
People now will go to the team room, and in the past maybe would have played table tennis. Now they'll watch their teammates playing Call of Duty, or they'll join in there. But the connections are still there, and that's what's really important. It's something that we strive to do whenever we come into camp. We know we can do it better, but touring allows us to do that as best as we can because we're together. There's no distractions. We're not going back to our clubs or back home at weekends like what happens in the Six Nations. We're together for 4.5 weeks. So you get to know each other better, and you have fun together off the field, and you work hard together on the field.
And that 4.5 weeks replicates potentially a World Cup cycle almost. You extend that World Cup cycle. We don't want to look too far ahead to World Cup, but before we look at some of the players and 6 new caps especially and have a chat around them, how important will that time together be? It's very seldom you get 4 consecutive tests. I know the first game's an E game, but it's still a test in terms of the preparation and the execution that will be required. Chile beating Russia the last 2 games,
And
back
Canada.
to back, and Canada, and their final qualification stage for the World Cup themselves. So it is going to be a test, but 4 consecutive weekends of test match rugby doesn't really happen unless it's in a World Cup. So does this help plan for what we're going to face next September?
100%. And we're 15 months away from our opening game against South Africa in Marseille in the World Cup, and that'll come in quite quickly. We have 15 test matches between now and then. I think 12 of the 15 are against teams in the top 9 in the world, so we've got some real challenges ahead of us, and that will give us opportunities to see players in these environments, touring especially, how well they get on as a teammate, but also how well they improve. That's what we want to see from our players. That's what we want to see when they come into a World Cup squad. So yeah, this is perfect preparation. It'll be a tough series. The Chile game itself is going to be very tough. They play America the following week, and whoever wins that game qualifies for the World Cup. They've been playing regularly as a team in the South American Championship. They beat the Jaguares a couple of weeks ago. So that's a big test for us. And then Argentina are just sitting one place below us in the world rankings. They picked a very experienced squad. They've got a really good coach now who's just taken over, Michael Cheika, who's had a lot of success at test level and club level. So we know it's going to be a challenge for us, but that should bring out the best in us.
And Chris, I mean, you alluded to those 6 uncapped players there as well. And obviously with the World Cup in mind, how much is this a chance for them to impress and make their mark? And just give us a little insight into your thinking about these 6 uncapped players and why they're in this squad.
Yeah, well, they've all earned it on whether it's their form for their club teams, and lots of them, those 6 especially, have been able to play club rugby the last few weeks and months, but also what we believe they can do between now and the World Cup, whether they've got a game that really aligns well with how we believe test match rugby should be played, or they're on a path of improvement that's going really quickly. So to get this opportunity, especially with the Chile game as well, and there we're not able to select players that play in England in that game, so that's an opportunity for more home-based players to be available for that game, and it's probably a bigger squad than we would normally take on a summer tour, but we do have with these 4 games, and the squad will change in size as we go through the tour, and it's up to players to make sure they're there the whole way. And they'll do that through their training performances and what they do when they get a chance to play. Yeah,
the 6 uncapped players, Murphy Walker, tight prop, he's been excellent, played a lot of Fosrock Super 6 rugby as well as professional rugby. Glenn Young, second row, back row for Edinburgh, with a lot of experience, real athletic lock. That, I mean, his first season with Edinburgh, he's running 2 or 3 tries from over halfway. Real dynamic player. Ben Muncaster, really aggressive back row player as well, been outstanding for Edinburgh. Matt Curry, young centre, obviously Kyle Rowe, who's been involved, Ollie Smith as well. So I agree, they've all been playing really well for their clubs, deserve the opportunity, and I actually see a lot more in them that we've not seen already, if that makes sense. I hope to see it. I know we'll see that because they really are exciting young players, and there's a lot of experience in there as well with Grant Gilchrist being skipper to point in the right direction.
And look, that's a really good point you bring up. When players get given an opportunity to play at a higher level, and not only do they survive in that level, but they thrive, that's invariably what's going to happen when they make the next step up. So we've seen that with Ben Muncaster, for example. Gets his opportunity this year, plays well, gets another opportunity, plays even better.
Consistently as well for a young player, it's really impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's brilliant seeing those young players take their opportunities. They've got a bigger one now this summer and playing test match rugby, or the potential of playing test match rugby, but we're confident they'll grab that.
let's just talk a little bit about the omissions, because people will look at that and notice names like Stuart Hogg not there. Is it simply just to give these guys a bit of a rest?
Yeah, look, we look at each individual, their own circumstances. The players that were on the Lions tour last year had the longest season out of any player that was playing rugby last year. I was part of that tour, and we were still playing into August. So that was in our minds as we were going through this season. Three of the guys in that Lions tour also were the 3 players that played the most minutes of any of our squad this year. So to back up a long season with another long season, we feel them and others, the best situation for them is to have a rest, to recover. Stuart Hogg in particular, he's played more minutes than any of our players, and had the Lions tour, and has played a lot of rugby for Exeter and us over the last few years, carrying a couple of injury niggles. Now, the easy thing would be to extend his season another month, but we feel it's better for him that he takes some time off, recovers in his body, and he's ready to go for what will be a massive year next year.
It's never nice being rested.
Yeah, I was going to say, because
I've been there.
Yeah, and I also just wonder, I mean, how is that temptation? Because surely there is such a temptation just to name your strongest squad with all these experienced guys. How difficult is that for you to sit and think, do you know what, no, the best thing to do? I mean, is it a risky strategy that it's perhaps not the strongest?
Well, you could view it like that, but also you view the risk of players playing where they've played a lot of rugby, and if they were to pick up an injury on tour, or if their pre-season was going to be shortened, because these players all play a lot of club rugby too, so I'm no doubt their clubs will be keen for them to play the first game of the season. So that's more of the risk that we're looking at, that where are they going to be come November, come Six Nations, and then this time next year we're starting a World Cup camp. We want them to be in their best possible condition. On the flip side, it's a big opportunity now for us to look at players that probably haven't had the chance to play for Scotland. Stuart Hogg has played probably 90% of the games of the last few years at fullback for Scotland, and played very, very well. He's our most capped player, but now someone else is going to play in these 4 games, and there's a few candidates on tour. It'll be interesting who grabs that opportunity and can play more games at 15 than the others.
It is. It's. I think it's. I wouldn't say it was a risk. I think it's a risk if you don't build for the future. In terms of the future, could be a week in advance. It doesn't have to be months or years in advance. You have to know that I suppose the risk of injury for anyone it is there. So I think building that squad base, and interestingly, most of the 6 we've mentioned, the uncapped guys, most of them, if not all, have been involved in the squad before, but just not played, certainly. So there's not a complete unknown for them. They know it. And somebody like Hoggy, who's played so often, he's played well so often, and I say I know how it feels like to be arrested. It was Argentina as well. It was like one of the last times we toured Argentina, 2010, I'd been injured in the Six Nations. I'd fought back to what I thought was fitness, and I wasn't allowed to go to Argentina, and I was absolutely raging. I was angry, and I came along and I said, well, you can train. So I trained at the side of the pitch to prove I was as fit as ever, and this, that, next thing. And I really struggled to say, well, why am I going to go on? I'm fit. Yeah, I've missed a bit of game pitting, but afterwards, it was the World Cup 2011 afterwards. If I'd toured in that 2010 tour Argentina, I don't think I would have been as effective as I was in the 2011 season, the World Cup season, getting that time off then. I didn't know that at the time, and it's hard for players, but I think once you go through that process, they'll really appreciate a rest, because you don't know you're tired because you do the same every week and you perform every week, but actually time off managed properly it's not a risk. I think it's a bonus.
Yeah, and I think we forget, as I suppose rugby supporters, the effort and the investment that players put in that are playing at the highest level. For guys to go on a Lions tour and to be playing last August and then go back to their clubs and playing September. Stuart had, I think, 1 week of pre-season. He was playing club rugby again last year. And also what's ahead of us. Like the World Cup is a demanding campaign, not just the 6-7 weeks you're in competition, but the World Cup camp itself. We have 4 warm-up games potentially to play before that. So again, it's getting the players in the best position for next season. And also, the depth we have just now. Like there's a few players that have missed out in selection that are playing very well for their club. So it became obviously an easier decision to look at other players, but also a tough decision because some players have just missed out.
A couple of names, James Lang in midfield for Edinburgh, Marshall Sykes. Jamie Dobie hasn't had a huge amount of rugby, but it's great to see George Horn back in just for around you. So you're right, there's a lot of depth, and I suppose it underlines the importance of the players who are there given the opportunity to take it with how they train and how they perform.
Yeah, and you mentioned there is still a lot of experience in the squad. We touched on Grant Gilchrist. Was he the obvious choice as captain?
Yes, we did have a thorough look and discussion as a coaching group of who our new leaders will be, and Grant is clearly one of them, and we feel that he's the right man for this tour to captain the side. He's captained the side in the past. He's been an excellent captain for Edinburgh this season, but it's an opportunity for others to lead on a tour. You've got to take more leadership responsibility in certain areas. It could be helping out with the laundry. It could be organising off-field activities. It could just be the way you lead yourself. The support that is often here in the top hotels you stay in and the facilities that we train at can not be there when you go abroad, and you've got to help out to make the team better. So we're looking for players to step up as individual leaders, but also the leadership group will change in the summer.
Chris, what was your role? Were you laundry boy?
Mixed. We used to have duty groups, and it was taken really seriously. It was one of the biggest pressures was if you were in charge of organising a day out or an event for the players who weren't selected for that weekend. You have to tick off all boxes from anything, paragliding, water skiing. I'm not sure that'll happen now.
I was going to say, where's the
more
risk
likely to be
assessment
golf or
for
Call of
that?
Duty, as you say. But you had this pressure thrust upon you. Like, you're away from home, you have to stay together. You're a group of disappointed players who are not involved that weekend, and you had to support the players who were playing, but also create an environment that it was enjoyable, it was fun, all part of the tour, and so that was the most stressful. The duty group it sounded bad, but it was actually alright because it was quite simple. But coming up with ideas and organising day trips was a more difficult one. But other players coming back as well from injury, say the experience of Matt Fagerson, Scott Cummins, Rory Darge. Three quality players there and George we mentioned as well, who've come back from injury. So training will become really important. You'll want an intensity of training to prepare these players who've maybe missed the last few weeks through injury.
Yes, and for some of them, there are different stages of the recovery. Yeah. So Scott Cummings and Matt Fagerson are very close to playing. George Horn is obviously back playing, and we'll aim to facilitate a match experience, let's call it, a training next week when we come in. And the players are aware of this, and not just for those players that come back from injury, but we need to get up to speed as quickly as possible and build that cohesion. And making a training almost like a game with full contact, potentially with the referee coming in, will prepare them what's going to be coming ahead the following week. So we do have 2 or 3 days camp here before we go to Chile, and Chile we're going to have to obviously focus on recovery after the long flight, jet lag. So these next few days in Scotland are really important on how we get our preparation and our game in place for Chile.
What are the conditions going to be like when you're over there? Have you looked into kind of temperatures and things, and how easy is it for these players to adapt from training in Scotland to then heading out there?
It's a big
well, we're getting into
I was
summer.
shocked by the rain when I landed from Townsend today.
We are getting into summer. It's likely to be hot and dry, so that's a positive for the rugby we prefer to play and aspire to play. There's an altitude factor in one of the venues, not as high as South Africa, but it'll be high enough. So players are used to playing at altitude now with the South African teams in the URC, but it will be a different challenge. But you would think that if the weather is good, then you're going to get an open style of rugby from both teams. I hope that's the case. That's a great test for us, and we believe it gets our strengths out in the field better, a chance for us to move the ball and play at speed.
just the final point as well. I know you've got a lot of other media commitments today and everything else, so we'll let away in time. But just on that point, Michael Cheika taking over from Argentina. They've picked a really experienced squad as well. What do you expect from Argentina?
Well, that's a tricky one, because you can't look at what they've done in the last campaign because it's a new coaching group, and then do you look at what
the individuals done?
or would you look at what Michael Cheika has done with Australia, or he's been coaching in Japan, or you focus more on yourself, and that's the route that we're going to go down. We're going to focus a lot on ourselves going into the Chile game in the first test, and then learn what the opposition have tried to do in their game and attack and defence. But it's interesting that he's picked a very experienced team, because Argentina have a lot of rugby. They have a lot of their players play in Europe, so they're off a long season. Then they've got this 3-test series with us. Then they go into the Rugby Championship, and they've got November tests. So you would think at some stage during the season he will give players a rest, but he's gone full bore with the squad he selected. Really experienced players like Augustine Cravey back into the squad, Juan Imhoff, players that play at a high level in Europe. So they're quality individuals. We know we'll have to be at our best to beat them.
Just get the Edinburgh lads to ask Bob.
I know you said final point, but you'll learn I do quite like to have the last word. So, Gregor, just wanted to talk a bit more about the fans, because obviously you said it's the first tour in a couple of years. The Scotland season pass is sold out for the upcoming season. How much does that fan support mean to you? I mean, these games are live on Sky Sports, so the fans get to see them. How much does that support mean to you and the guys?
It's massive, and I actually referred to it last night when we had our Zoom call. We really sensed the support behind the team. Before lockdown, we were getting sellout crowds, and it's been so pleasing and exciting that since crowds have got back into BT Murrayfield and stadiums, that we had sellouts for our games against Australia, South Africa, Japan, and in the Six Nations. So to hear that the supporters are already snapping up tickets for November is fantastic. And you know that there's going to be times where the supporters don't just see victories all the time. And I remember after we played South Africa in November that we were disappointed that we'd lost to South Africa when we felt that the momentum was going our way with 15 minutes left. An hour and a half after the final whistle, we were going back onto the bus back to the hotel, and hundreds of supporters had stayed to cheer the players on. And I've never experienced that before after a defeat, where the support is still behind the team. So we know that that's something that is unique and special just now. We've got to make the most of that and show our supporters what we're capable on that field.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant, isn't it? Gets
Gregor,
inspired and listening to it already.
Real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for your time. It's great to get your insight into those team selection, squad selection as well, and all the best for the upcoming tour.
Thank you.